Good morning. It's Monday, July 24th, and it's Politics with Pierre. So today we're going to talk about the recent Supreme Court ruling on affirmative action, which is huge. So for those of you who are not aware, the Supreme Court recently ruled to ban and discontinue the use of affirmative action within the admission process for colleges and for universities, right? So this is huge. So this had to deal with two cases that were brought before them, the University of North Carolina and Harvard University. So one can ask, what is affirmative action? So affirmative actions are programs and policies that are put in place to create equal opportunity, to prevent discrimination and racism, to prevent discrimination on the basis of race, gender, and other forms of identity, right? So affirmative action in the current form goes back to the civil rights movement, and it goes back to 1961, when institutions of higher education and universities made a commitment to enroll a higher number of African Americans and other minorities, right? So studies have shown that diversity within institutions of higher education leads to productivity, leads to cultural competency, and leads to innovation, right? So diversity within institutions of higher education is extremely important. But the Supreme Court ruled to discontinue affirmative action. They ruled 6-3 against affirmative action in the case of North Carolina and 6-2 in the case of Harvard University. Their reasoning is that affirmative action violates the Equal Protection Clause. Interesting, because the Equal Protection Clause is supposed to protect the rights and of historically disenfranchised groups, right? So, but the courts have ruled that the affirmative action programs violate the Equal Protection Clause, right? So this essentially promotes an idea of race neutral, right? Which is false, right? We are not on the same playing field, right? And that is because of historical factors, how racism has been embedded and interwoven into our institutions, right? So affirmative action is meant to correct this, right? Before we can move to a state of equality, we must deal with equity. We must deal with fairness, right? So that means that programs and policies must be put in place to create a more just and a more fair society. And we just have not reached that place where we could do away with affirmative action programs, right? This data from the Census Bureau has shown that when it comes to college graduates, right, 61% of Asian Americans have a bachelor's degree, 42% white adults, right? But when you go to the African American community, it drops to 28%. And when you go to the Hispanic community, it drops to 21%, right? But the Supreme Court has said that individuals could still talk about their race and talk about racism in their essay, right? How their race has impacted them. It's interesting how those who are applying to colleges have to educate universities about racism, right? So please share this video. It's very important just to create awareness about what is happening with the Supreme Court, how we're being impacted by a 6-3 Supreme Court with 6 conservatives and only 3 liberals. So please leave a comment, ask a question, share.